Oh, friends, what a topic. So I will say that, um, you know me, I'm always trying to regroup or like rework, figure out how can I be more effective. I was texting some friends today and I was like, here's what I want to do. I want to work less, make more money, and help more women. That's the dream, right? That is the dream. But that's a constant evolution too. So I'm always regrouping. And for me, like I have to look at, okay, I have leaders that I want to equip. I also have a team that I want to lead, right? And so I'm always trying to balance between what does that look like and how do I really offer something that's helpful to you. So if you filled out the survey that I sent via email, a couple, maybe, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, thanks, because I'm not going to pretend that I know how to do this. I don't know how to do this. I'm just throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. But your feedback really, really helps. And so one of the things we discussed was that we were doing Zooms, but it was kind of just we were running through. Here's what I was trying to do. I do small group coaching with my team, but it's specific small groups. It's 4 groups of people for 6 weeks at a time. Like it's intentional. And we always have a game plan. They all know each other. I was trying to do that with us. It wasn't working out because I was just there's 110 of you that get this email. And so I can't just throw it all and say like, let's get on Zoom. It just doesn't work. So when I was looking through your struggles, I was like, it makes more sense if we tackle a specific topic. So that's what we're doing. So today, one of the things that I just was rampant in your feedback was, how do I motivate my team? How on earth do I motivate my team? You're going to be mad at me today, and I'm sorry. And then maybe you'll get over it and we'll be able to work through some things. But you're going to be irritated with me, and I'm apologizing, but I'm not apologizing because I'm going to tell you the truth. So if you're just joining us, we are going to open up for questions at the end, but I also mentioned this is going to be available later for other people to watch on YouTube. So it's not available right now. It's unlisted, but you just may want to, if you want to talk about a specific situation on your team, you may want to be vague about that. Okay. Does that make sense? Or we can also have that conversation later if there's something specific like that. Okay. So here we go. How do I motivate my team? So, oh shoot. Y'all, I'm really sorry. I gotta get my phone. I had like a note on my phone. All right, hold on. Wow, way to be unprepared. I don't even know where my phone is. No, I just got your text, Anna. Yes, that's perfectly fine. Related to my phone. Okay, here we roll. Here we roll. Okay. So today we're talking about how do I motivate my team. You're going to be mad. And I'm sorry, but you don't. Okay. It's not your job to motivate your team. It never has been your job, and it's never going to be your job. Kaylin already said it. You can't motivate them. You can't. Let's talk about why. We have to talk about how do we shift our thinking, because that's still a resounding thing. Like that's language that we use in leadership, but it's not helpful language. Okay. And the other part of that is we have to realize that if we're saying things like that we're attempting to motivate our teams or whatever, we're also modeling that for our team who we eventually want to lead teams. They're not ever going to be able to motivate their teams either. The reason you can't motivate your team is because motivation is an internal motive. I can't give somebody else an internal motive, right? Essentially, a motive is a why. It's the reason you're doing the thing that you're doing. Well, you can't provide that for somebody. One of the problems is sometimes what I see leaders do is you attempt to motivate by utilizing the thing that's motivating to you. So maybe you're motivated by wanting to quit your job or wanting more financial freedom or wanting to pay off debt, whatever your motivation is, whatever your why is. And sometimes we default to trying to lead that way. Well, the reality is not all of your team has the same motive, right? So we have to wrap our brains around that. And this is what makes leadership complicated and messy, but it's also beautiful. And one of the things I really, really, really want you to let go of today is that it's not your job to motivate, and it's never going to be. But you do have a job that's similar to motivation, but it's different. And we need to make a shift there. Okay. So, here's what your actual job is. Your job is to guide people. Okay. I want you to take away this concept of like, oh, I'm going to rally the troops. Oh, I'm going to motivate them. Oh, it's my job to do that. It's not your job to do that. Okay. And I know I've probably said this 1,000 times. I'm going to have to say 1,000 and more times before you get it through your head, right? Because there's something about leadership that feels like that's what it should be. What your job actually to do is, your job is to act as a guide. Your job is to show the way. Okay. Think about it like this. Think about a movie that you've watched. Every movie has a guide. So every movie has a protagonist. Every good story has a protagonist. And that protagonist usually seeks out some form of a guide. I should have come up with an example. Okay, The Wizard of Oz. I don't know why I'm thinking of this. The Wizard of Oz. Dorothy is the protagonist in the movie, right? In the story, we all know The Wizard of Oz. The guide is the good fairy. The good, what is she? What's she called? You know what I'm talking about. She's not a fairy. She's a witch. Good witch. The good witch. She's the guide. She's the one that is encouraging Dorothy on the path. Now, here's the thing. She didn't give Dorothy the motivation. She's just showing her the way. Dorothy had her own motivation before she went to the good witch. Good witch, white witch, I don't know. I'm getting that in Chronicles of Narnia next. Can you tell I have small kids? So we want to act as the guide. We want to put ourselves in the position to say, when someone comes to us and says, I know there's more. I know I want something. I know I'm moving towards something. I know that there's something possible here, that we take the role of saying, this is the way we go. This is where you go. We're just guiding. Okay. So what does guiding look like practically? Because that sounds great to say, but what does that actually look like in your actual leadership? It's developing people. I really want you to understand that regardless of who is on your team, there will always be an element of fear. People are always battling fear of some sort. They're battling fear, or they're battling self-doubt, or they're battling internal voices, or they're battling external voices. All of those things relate back to fear. Am I good enough? Do I have what it takes? What if I don't succeed? What if I can't do it? What if I look stupid, right? We can tend to forget that. And a lot of you, because of where you are in your business, you're either natural achievers, you were naturally motivated to jump in and make this business work. So it's harder for you to relate to someone who on your team doesn't have the motivation, right? So let's go back to how do we help them we're not going to motivate them, but how do we help them find their motive? How do we help them find their why? It comes down to a couple things. One of them is belief. It's belief in we have to ask the question of them, or we have to basically convey to them, help them believe that the work that they're going to do is going to be worth it, right? So sometimes it's simply that they don't think whatever effort they're going to put forth is going to be worth it. It's a challenge in this industry because so much of it is based on lots of work in the beginning that long-term ends up being less work later on because of exponential growth. So it can be challenging to say, well, I'm putting in more work than I'm making right now, right? That's where they get a little like, I'm doing all this work and I'm still only making 25% off what I'm selling, right? Whatever they're doing. And that can be challenging because they might be working however many hours in a day. And you break that down and you're like, it's not really that great of a return. What we have to do is we have to help them see the bigger picture long-term. Do they believe that long-term, the work is going to be worth the effort they put into it, right? Is it going to yield the fruit that they're looking for? So much of it is based on belief. It's belief in, is the work going to be worth it? But also it comes back to belief of themselves. Do I have what it takes? We have to remember that there's always going to be fear. There's always going to be doubt. They're not going to come out and tell you that they're scared. They're not going to. They're not going to come out and tell you that they're doubting themselves. Sometimes you'll have somebody that will, but more than likely than not, they're just not going to do it. They're just not going to do it, right? Because there's not the belief either in the outcome or in what their ability to do is, okay? So we've got to focus on belief. How do we do that? It means that we have high expectations of people. It doesn't mean that they come in and we're immediately setting their goals. Here's what everybody on our team does. Not necessarily, because we know, and we have to wrap our brains around this, that a third are going to do nothing, a third are going to do the minimum, and a third are going to do something, but even smaller than that third, are you going to have the few who actually run, right? It's numbers. It's always been numbers. It always will be numbers. We start to change that paradigm though, when we are able to help people find a motive to do this. Okay. So the belief has to be there that the work's going to be worth it in the end. The belief in self has to be there. And we have to have expectations of people, because a lot of times they don't have an expectation of themselves. So I want you to think of somebody on your team. Like, I want you to think about somebody on your team who you see so much potential in, but they're not showing up. Yeah, will you nod or raise your hand like, yeah, I do have those. There's potential, but they're not doing the work. Hold on one second, gotta admit somebody. Yes. Okay, you're all saying yes, yes. So they have potential. I want you to think about that for a minute. I want you to think about that specific person. It comes back to a lack of belief. It's either lack of belief in the long-term vision of what the business opportunity is, what Scentsy could actually do for them, or it's a lack of belief in themselves. Okay. Again, they're not going to come out and tell you, I don't really know if I can do this. Sometimes they will, but a lot of times they just won't do the work because it's easier, right? It's just easier not to do it. Okay. So how do we help them shift? Goes back to motivation, the thing that we cannot provide for them, but the thing that we can help them grow into. I can't have this big, beautiful why, this big, beautiful motive, this big, beautiful thing I'm working towards if I don't believe that it's possible, can I? So we want people to dream. We want them to have these big goals. We want to say, what's possible? What do you want out of your business? Like, do you want to take your family to the beach? Do you want to get out of debt? All you guys know, all the 75 million things you could do with this, okay? We want them to have these big dreams. The problem is they're not going to be able to dream big about it if they don't believe that, one, they can do it, and two, it's actually going to be worth it. It'll actually come out like that they're going to get the outcome that they want. So we have to help instill belief. So what does that look like? I want to free you of this, like, I've got to show up on my team page every day. I've got to post something every day. I've got that. Listen, that's not leadership. That's not leadership. Now, I'm not saying posting on your team page is bad. Hear me. It's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is, more than anything, leadership is empowering. It's having high expectations. It's believing something about somebody else and continuing to tell them and show them that it's possible over and over and over again. Okay. So this is why I was talking to one of my frontline the other day, and I've got this group that I've been working with that have just made leaps and bounds in their belief and their ability in themselves and their motives, all these things. But the thing about doing that work of helping them work into growing their motive and growing their belief system, it's harder work. It's not harder work. It's a deeper work. It's deeper work than you showing up and posting something on your team page every day that's a blanket catch-all, right? That's just work. Helping people work into their own why and work into the belief system of their why, it's deeper work, okay? But it's also the work that gives you the most reward at the end, because you're actually watching people develop. You're actually pulling them up and saying, no, I see this in you. And here's all the reasons of how, or like, here's all the examples of the people that have done this. So I got off track. I want to backtrack. I was talking to a leader about, one of my up and coming leaders about events and how I really hate that we haven't had any in-person events in a while, because I want you to think too about your experiences. I remember the first event I went to. It was in March. Actually, it was March 1st. I remember because it's Jana Holcomb's birthday. It was March 1st of, when did I join? 17. I joined in 17, so it would have been in 18. We drove down to Dallas, and there was this little gathering in a hotel room, like a hotel conference room. Like, it wasn't big. There were maybe like, it was biggish, but not like now. It wasn't like World Tour. There were probably like 500 people there. Maybe, I don't know. But I remember walking in this room, and I was young. I was 23, 24. I don't know. Doesn't really matter, but I was young. And I just, up until that point, at that point, I joined in November. I was a superstar consultant. So I was doing things, but there was a part of me that felt like I was too young. I had no experience in leadership, direct sales. I really sucked at sales. Really, I did. Like, I could show people how to use the product, and that was working for me early on, but I was not good at, like, I'm still not good at sales. Like, I'm just not. I couldn't upsell somebody for anything. Like, I already told you all that story. I was at a party one time, and Brian came with me, and we were at this lady's house. Her husband was a general in the Army. She had $100 bill. And I was like checking her out, and she like got like probably spent, I think she spent like $75. And I'm like just checking her out. Brian's like, oh, I didn't join in 17. Kaylin's like, you didn't join in 17. No, I joined in 07. Wow. I don't know, you guys. I've lost my mind. So this would have been March of 08. You're right. I'm sorry. I'm having an existential crisis. My kids are turning 12 and 14 this week. It's too much for me. Anyways, so she has $100 bill. She's like checking out, and she spends 75 of it. And Brian was there. When we leave, he's like, babe, she wanted to spend the whole $100. Like, all you had to do was suggest something else. And I'm like, well, she told me what she wanted, so I just checked her out. Like, I'm really not good at it, you guys. I'm not. Still to this day. Like, whatever you want to spend, I'm here for this. Anywho, so I'm not good at sales. So I had all these thoughts in my head. Like, even though I had made it superstar consultant, I still had these thoughts in my head. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm young. I have no experience. Like, who's going to listen to me? Like, I don't know. I go to this event, and I just remember the breadth and width of the kind of people that were there. You know your first experience at a Cynthia event, and you're like, holy cow. It's like literally every walk of life, every like type of person, and which is what I absolutely love about our culture. But when you're working in your team and they're not in this space where they can see people and all the hair, yes, all the purple hair, like, and all the colors of hair, really. When you're not being able to see people, it's so much harder to wrap your brain around. If she can do it, I can do it, right? And just like what Anna said, they can do this, I can do it. Because that was 100% the experience I had. I remember Debbie Mangum. So we used to get we had this pen, it said Scentsy in the old font, like, that really, I don't even remember what that font's called, but that old original font. And it was this pen. And then we had these little charms that hung on it. Like, they were little people, like based on, and then money, little dollar signs. You guys, it was so Sister Frisky. Yes, that's what that font is. I mean, it was like the most ghetto. And it wasn't ghetto. It was just like, it was gaudy is what it was. And so I remember Debbie Mangum walking up to me and introducing herself, just sweet as can be. And she has this pen on, and it is like loaded down with pens. And I just remember thinking, I can't believe she's wearing that. Like, I was like, what is she doing? But she was so kind and so sweet, but also so opposite of like what I had pictured in my head to be successful, I guess, which I'm not trying to like, I love Debbie with 1 million, seriously, like, but it's just not what my brain was saying. This is what success is going to look like in this business. And I just remember walking away thinking, she can do it, I can do it. Like, and that's so empowering. But I think the challenge we have right now is we have to create those experiences for our team right now. And we don't have the ability to show up at World Tour with them, to show up at SFR with them, for them to see it. We have to create those experiences, because that's where the belief is going to come from. That's where the internal motivation is going to come from, when they see somebody else that is not like them, or maybe that's exactly like them, that has done it and can say, oh, she can do it, I can do it. But we can't just falsely create that. We can't just continue to say, we have to show. And that really is the challenge right now of leadership, is that we've got to be able and create experiences and spaces for people to see what's possible. Because how can they believe something if I can't see it, right? Yes, there's faith and all of those things. I get that. But we're talking about asking them to do the work, right? I'm asking you to show up, do the work. Well, I'm not going to show up and do the work if I don't believe it's going to get me the outcome that I want, right? We've got to be able to show them. I also feel like I should note that training, I went with Jana Holcomb and her crazy aunt. I'm telling you, this woman's crazy. They were both on my team, and we ditched after lunch. We didn't go back. We went and ate at Papado's, and then we had a glass of wine with lunch, and we didn't go back to the training. I was like, never in my life. What a horrible consultant I was. So listen, there's hope for people. If you get frustrated, your team doesn't show up at something, like, she still has potential. She still has potential. Okay, I want to look at your comments. I have a couple more things I want to tell you. Okay. Okay, so Peg said, there has to be joy in what you're doing in order to be willing to hang in there and put in the work. And I would say, even aside from joy, there has to be motive, right? It's hard to make someone do all this work if they don't know why they're doing it. What I have found is people will do it for a little bit without a motive, but then they get to the wall and they say, meh, I don't really know why I'm doing this anyways. And it just got hard. Not worth it. Right. So yes, joy is part of it, but part of that comes from working towards something intentionally. Right. Belief has been hitting me hard the last week because I had the epiphany that I didn't have it in myself and nobody else was going to give it to me. Heather, I think that's so true. And I wanted to hit on this, is that it's not only that we need them to have belief, it's that we have to model it. And if we're not modeling it, how on earth would we expect them to just drum it up in themselves, right? And it's something like, I can continue to encourage you. I can continue to say I see it in you. I can continue to lead you, but I can't make you believe. So much of that is internal. That's why we're always working on developing and growing and like helping people. We're guiding, right? We're just guiding. Okay, I think we need to know when to bless and release. Yes, I find I spend too much time on people I believe in that won't believe in themselves. I want to come back to that. I want to circle back to that, because I think that is part of the struggle of how do we really instill belief in people over the long haul. So I want to come back to that because I have some ideas. Yeah. So I have one that was up to start and just let it all go. She could be amazing, but doesn't want to put in the work on the front end. It's frustrating and sad, but I can't seem to get her to believe she can. Yeah. Also, thank you for reminding me when I joined, Kaylin. Caitlin, because she's old. That's why you're saying she was wearing her charms. I was wearing all my charms until someone told me that they weren't about to wear all that garb. Hurt my feelers. No, I don't wear them. Hey, listen, I think if you love them, you should wear them. That's what I think. Okay.
No way. Now I know how you really feel.
Listen, listen, you, you know how I really feel, but at the end of the day, if it makes you happy, you should do it. I'm also not going to judge you. I'm going to say more power to you. Mostly because, you know what? I didn't have the balls to do it myself. Okay, Anna says, this is why none of us should be focused on the dang SSD title. Telling you, you get there and say, now what? It's the biggest letdown. I tell people that all the time. And I even tell my girls when I'm coaching them into getting closer to director, I'm like, look, I know that's like the goal. It's going to be a huge letdown. Okay. Because I'm going to say, see you later. Not really. I don't say see you later, but essentially I'm like, all right, go forth and multiply. Good luck. You know, no, I mean, yes and no. But it's also like, oh, this is the same crap that I was doing before. It's just now I have more responsibility and wait, what? Like, same crap, different month, pretty much. Peg said director was exciting, but star director, I expected to feel different. Listen, I got to keep telling y'all, none of them feel different. I actually think SSD is the worst one. It's just something to shoot for. Something to shoot for. I know you're excited now and you can't wait to get there. It's just something to shoot for. I will send you flowers and a confetti cannon. But aside from that, it's kind of a letdown. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, I want to go back to what Peg was saying about when we lessen the reads, but I want to talk about a couple other things real fast. Okay, I have a quote I want to tell you. Sorry, I'm just looking at my notes. This is probably one of my favorite quotes ever. I really need to get it framed, and I need to get it framed and put it on my wall. This is the essential, like this is what your job is. This in a nutshell is what your job is. If you want to build a ship, don't drum up the people to gather wood, divide the work, and give orders. Instead, teach them to yearn for the vast, endless sea. That's it. So many of you right now are giving orders, telling people what to do, but you haven't showed them what's possible, right? They haven't seen what the sea, they don't see the sea. They don't know what it looks like. They're just doing the things because you're telling them to, right? That's management. There's a difference in management and leadership. Leadership is guidance. It's guiding the way. It's showing what's possible. It's developing. It's not managing and saying, do X, Y, Z. Management is easier, but it's not more effective. It's not even close to more effective. So don't default to, and I will say most leaders will default to management when things get hard. It's just easier. Let me just tell you what to do. Just go do this. But when we continue to tell people what to do, all we're doing is creating followers. We're not creating leaders. And then we wonder why we don't have more leaders. Because we've been managing instead of leading and guiding. Okay. Okay. Here's what I wanted. I want to talk about what Peg was talking about, and then I want to open it up. So how do I know when to bless and release? I think the bigger question is, how do I continue to have space where I can increase belief, like where I can help people continue to grow their belief in the process and in themselves, even when they're not receiving it. So there's some one-on-one things that can be done, right, to help instill belief. But I think, Peg, what you're talking is about is like, I was working with this person and I get to a place and she's not doing it anymore. She's not doing the work. She's not willing. So how do you create space? Because essentially all you're doing in leadership is creating space for people to grow. How do I create space for me to continue to have those conversations of belief that are not so one-on-one? It's like, how do I continue to say the same thing over and over and over again, right? Because it's going to take them 15, 20 times to hear the same friggin' thing before they get it through their heads. Like, and some of you know, some of you are like, yeah, I'm still You told me this 100 times and I still am trying to like absorb it and believe it, right? So how do you create space? I'm not going to give you the answer. I'm asking you the question. How do you create space to continue to build people up in their belief of themselves and their belief of the process? Now it's an open forum. Go ahead. How do we do that? Oh, wait. Nobody? Nobody wants to talk about it?
I think we show up when we're not perfect.
Oh, that was real good.
That's
Who said that?
Anna.
Oh, okay. I couldn't, I don't know why I couldn't. Got you now.
That's a hard one. That's a real hard one.
Yeah. Why is that hard for you, Anna?
Because I need to reflect on that. Probably because we think others have an expectation of us to be perfect. Because perfect looks attractive, right? So if we should be perfect and we do all the things, then people will think, oh, I want to be like that. But at the same time, you're creating an ideal that people say, well, I can't do that because my life doesn't look like that.
That's exactly right. So much of that too is your personality, in that you just Anna specifically, because I know Anna. So much of that is it's hard for you to be vulnerable because you want to appear successful, right? And there's this lie in our head that says that vulnerability and success don't go together. But it's a lie, because it is vulnerability that actually connects us to people. It's vulnerability that says, yeah, I don't know how to do this. Like, sometimes I get it right. Sometimes I don't get it right. But that also is so think back, we're talking about how do we get belief in how do we create belief in our team members? Part of that has to do with the ability to not be perfect, because they're never going to be perfect. They're never going to get it right. Right. And if we can step up even in the space that we're in and say, yeah, sometimes I don't know what I'm doing. Sometimes I mess up. Sometimes I misstep. It seems counterintuitive, right? It seems backwards, but there comes in that a confidence to say, oh, okay. In my head, I think she's got it all together. In my head, I think she's perfect. But if she can do it, maybe I can do it, right? That creates one of those moments of, oh, maybe I could.
Yeah, even you said, when we did one of these Zooms, you said something about how sometimes you just aren't in a place to be advertising LTOs. And so you just don't do it. And I was like, oh my gosh, like she just doesn't do it. Like I can do that.
Sometimes you just need permission, right?
I've told Jenny the same thing. I'm like, if it's stressing you out, don't do it.
Yeah. That goes back to, I want to go back to something you said, Anna, and it's expectation. So you said, I'm trying to live up to this expectation that other people have of me. And one of the things we want to do is, how do we identify what the expectation we have for ourselves is? Because you can't live up to anybody else's expectation of yourself. Nobody's. All you can do is live up to your own expectations.
It reminds me what you just said, if I can interject here.
Yes.
I used to, before kids, a long, long time ago, I used to make cookies and cakes and desserts, and it was really fun. But it was the most stressful thing. I actually ended up not liking it because it turned it into a job and not fun. That's besides the point. So I was complaining and venting to my mom, who is worldly and wisdomous. And she says, well, they don't know what it's supposed to look like. The only reason you're stressing yourself out is because you have high expectations on yourself, but nobody else has those expectations. So let it go, essentially. Yeah. And that I've carried that through my business. And one of my favorite things that I think is hilarious, but also helps with what we're talking about is I constantly fumble over my words. I wish I were a better speaker, and I'm working on it. But I constantly say in my videos to my team, see, if I can do this, you guys can do this, because I'm constantly flubbing up what I say. But it's one way that I kind of point out, like, you guys, look at me and how I'm speaking. And if I can do this, you can do this.
Yeah. Peg just said your shirt is perfect for our conversation today, and it is.
Oh, thanks. I think it's a world tour shirt, I think.
Well, look at that. How good. How great that is. Yeah. I think that's so true. And you're right. Like most of the time, the expectation that we put in our head about what people are believing about us is completely, you're just like what your mom said to you. Like, you've set this expectation of what you think they think it's going to be like. And you're trying to live up to this ideal that you can't live up to, but also they don't know, like that's not real. Peg, you got some wisdom for us?
Yeah, it's funny because I remember when I first had director and Sarah Thomas was asked to do training on Party with a Purpose at SFR, and she asked me and a couple of the other leaders on her team to do the training. And I remember feeling like I was such a big deal because I got invited to do this training, and had people coming up to me afterwards and wanting to take their picture with me and stuff like this. And I'm like, this is like ridiculous, and I remember having a conversation with Sarah Thomas saying, I feel like I just got invited to the cool kids table like that, and that's like been our joke for years, because I'm like, you look at all these people who are the leaders and, we look at the SSDs, and it's like, I want to be just like them, and like, here we are, everybody striving to be that. And then when you talk to the people that are at that level, they're just like, yeah, it's not all that, you know what I mean? And it's, we all strive to be that. And it's like, you get there. And like, I laugh now when I have these people going like, oh, Peg, someday I want to be just like you. And I'm like, I am such a damn hot mess. Like, and I'm always saying to them, look, if I could do this, anybody could do this. I go and do vendor events. I never count my money before. I never count my money after. I just deposit it in the bank. I don't know how much I made. I'm just like, I know I sold a lot of stuff, so I must have did good, and like,
Did good.
And they're like, how do you manage a business that way? And I'm like, I don't. I really
got more money than when I came here. That's all I know.
That's it. I know I packed up, I had 2 empty boxes. That's it. I had 2 empty boxes. So
must have sold something.
I guess I did good, and I'm like, I'm terrible at stuff like that. I don't track things. I just started this year, 6 years in, I just started tracking my numbers, and I'd like, that's just the way I fly, and I'm like, I'm having fun doing this. I'm going to continue having fun doing it. And that's the way I roll, and
so I want to talk about the cool kids table because I like that. Well, I don't like the cool kids table essentially, but I know exactly what you mean. So it goes back to how do we create small wins for our team members? We were talking about like people get to a place sometimes and they just stop working or they're not willing to do the work anymore. And one of the things is we really want to help continue to guide them towards next steps. Sometimes it's as simple as they don't know what the next step is. They don't know what it's going to take. They don't know what the difference is between what they have to do to get here from where they're at, So in theory, they know, well, I'm star and I have to have, 6,000 team wholesale and 3 active frontline to get to superstar. But there's a gap there, right? That they sometimes can't recognize, well, what does that mean? How do I close the gap? How do I get closer to that? So a lot of times it's us helping them into next steps. I was having a conversation with one of my frontline the other day, and she's one that you guys have spent a couple of years on just developing. I saw it in her. No, I didn't overwork. I didn't spend too much time, all those things, but I did invest in her and I could see it. And I knew that she had some internal motivation, but there was so much fear. And so we just had to work through some personal growth stuff, but she's probably going to promote to superstar consultant this month. And we were talking and I said, tell me about, what are you going to have to do to close the gap? She was at like 3,500 PR team wholesale volume last month. I'm like, how do we close the gap? What's that look like? And so we start looking at her team and she's got 14 team members and they're all her frontline. And I said, look, here's what you're doing really well. You're recruiting really well and you're teaching them how to sell, but you're not showing them why or how they should recruit. You might be showing them how. You're telling them, hey, you need to do this, but I don't feel the need to do it if I can't see what it's going to get me, right? Again, there's that belief thing. And so we had to talk about I'm like, hey, look, even if you only get 2 of them, because her goal is 3 new team members this month, and I'm sure she'll do it. But I'm like, even if you just get 2 of them to recruit 1 people, we go from 3 new team members to 5. And when you have 14 and you go to 19, that's a huge difference, right? But we have to instill belief. There has to be a reason why. We have to help them see motive. And so, but that's just looking at how do we help them close the gap? How do we show them what the next step is? Because really, for her to get to where she got, she was doing all the things she needed to do. In essence, it was just what's the next step in developing leadership. Does that make sense? Why are you muted? It's fine. Okay. What other questions or comments or like, I still can't wrap my head around this, or I would, talk to me. What you got?
I mean, I guess the question is, you can have that conversation with her and have her, and she wants to get her team to recruit, but how does she make that happen? I mean, I think that's one of the things that I personally struggle with is, and in my coaching, is that I can tell them what they need to do, but, and they say they're doing the things, whatever that is. But it's just still not clicking for them. So, I mean, I guess that's not really a motivation-based question, but I know a lot of us are feeling like we're giving them that feedback, but then they're not successful, and then they lose their steam because it's not happening for them.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like,
yep.
I don't want them to lose their motivation because they're excited about it, but for whatever reason, it's not clicking, and then they are dejected.
Okay, a couple things. Okay, I just made a couple notes because I don't want to forget what I was going to say. All right. It comes down to the first question that I would, like, if I was having a conversation with somebody in this situation, I would want to know, do they actually have the motivation? Is there a driving force that I can remind them of? Like this girl, it is clear, it is evident, she's not going to stop. Her husband, and honestly, all of this happened during COVID. Her husband is in the military, drives for Uber on the weekends. And all of a sudden during COVID, he couldn't drive because they wouldn't let them. He was going to Dallas to drive. It's more than the amount of miles he was supposed to be traveling outside of the base. So he couldn't go drive Uber. And they would it was like, okay, I have to make this work. And then once she got a taste of what she could do, she saw results and she was doing the things. It's like fire. It's like fuel to fire. He's now only driving like 1 weekend a month. And she's like, I don't want him driving anymore. Like, so so when we have the hard conversation of like, hey, you getting 3 recruits is great, but you getting 3 recruits isn't going to cut it long-term because you can't have a team of only frontline. You can, but that's not the way it works the best, right? We don't have exponential growth that way. That's what this business is about, is exponential growth. So I'm happy. So when I have those conversations and I'm telling her like, hey, the goal's not to have everybody on your team get a new frontline and double. Like, is that cool? Yeah, that'd be cool. That's not going to happen. So why don't we instead focus on the couple people that have some desire and have some internal motivation, and let's start there. And I can constantly loop back around to what her motivation is. Why are you going to do this? It's harder. It's harder for her to go and encourage somebody else to recruit than it is for her to go do the work herself, right? But that's how this business works. If I want it to grow exponentially, I have to do that. So I can loop back to her motivation. But if somebody doesn't have that and you don't know what it is, you can't do that. Okay, on top of that, and we'll talk about both of these things. 2 more things. In your coaching, and this is something I'm learning and it's so hard for me, but I'm seeing such huge results, is you've got to focus on equipping and not telling. Because I am so like, I have the answer. I know what you should do. Let me just tell you. There's 2 problems with it. If I tell you what to do, it's my idea. You're not as bought in. If I ask you, this is an actual conversation we had earlier, I guess last week. I said, okay, so we know that you need to get a couple of your team members at least recruiting, I said, so how do you think you could do that? Like, it's so hard for me not to just like tell her, here's what I think you should do. So she's, rolling it. I can see her brain working and she's like, okay, well, no, there's one girl and I know that she wants this, but like, she's only seen her 25%, she hasn't even sold 2,000 yet. So she hasn't even seen that 30% bonus. Like, so I think if I can talk to her a little bit more about why she's doing this. I know what she wants, but we're so far from that because, it's just her. I'm like, okay, great. So when are you going to have that conversation? So, when if you can focus on equipping, asking the questions, helping them come up with the answers. And you may have to do some redirection. They might have a really horrible idea, like, like, I don't know, I'll just email them all and tell them they should recruit. Okay, well, maybe we should backtrack. That's, here's another idea. What if we try? So it's hard not to tell, but the more you can equip and guide, that's better. The other thing is, and this is hard too, and I'm a huge advocate for this, and not everybody stands on this side of the fence. I fully and firmly believe that the more you can focus on someone's strengths, the better they will be at this business long-term, the longer they will stay, the better a leader they'll be. When we push, now I'm not saying we don't push them outside their comfort zone sometimes. I'm not saying that. But I am saying if we want to establish routines and rhythms in their business that are profit generating, that are income producing, that are creating long-term growth in their business, those have to be centered around the things they're actually good at. Okay. So if you're talking to a strong introvert and your advice is go hand out samples to strangers at Target or at mom's group or whatever, it's going to be like, there's no way they're not going to do it. We want to establish routines and rhythms that are actually possible for them long term. So for an introvert, that might look like, hey, I know you've been developing relationships like on Facebook, you've been reconnecting with people, whatever. Maybe it's time you bring up the opportunity or hosting or, a product to one of those people in a one-on-one conversation. That's going to be much more doable for an introvert than, hey, go, and probably more effective. So focus on strengths and help them identify their strengths. Like that's very valuable, but also guide and equip instead of telling what to do, which is hard, but that is coaching essentially, is that we're just asking the questions, helping them develop the answers, but that's how we get leaders long-term, not followers. Okay. Other questions or comments or concerns, or I still don't know. Is that helpful, Anna? Okay.
I think ultimately the one that I'm really struggling with is her why just couldn't possibly be strong enough, because if it was, she wouldn't be putting 500 in on the last day of the month.
Yep.
And she would have a recruit within the last year.
Right.
So
right. Yeah. And those are hard. And here's the other thing, like some of those things are just hard conversations. And the reality is there are people who get stalled out when they just stop growing personally. Sometimes it has nothing to do with the business. Sometimes it has everything to do just where they are internally. That's why I'm saying like this part of it, this part of leadership, it's so much messier and deeper, but it's also so much more effective long-term. And there has to be some belief in you as a leader, confidence in you and your words, and confidence in the business to be able to have these conversations with somebody, right? Like if you don't believe that since he's going to be around in 5 years, guess what you can't do? You can't lead. Like so much of it starts with your belief in what you actually believe is possible and what you believe is possible of them, because all of those things get projected on them, whether you're saying them out loud or not. Okay. Questions, comments, concerns? You want to talk about my earrings? Whatever.
So if you can't, I'm this. We'll stay on topic for one more second. I swear. No,
it's fine.
So if somebody gives you the line that they think that their why is strong, and they're inspired. They have a goal. They want to stay home or whatever it is. But it's
not enough.
There's a disconnect somewhere, because if it was enough, if it was a strong why, you would be doing the thing. So I think that's where I'm really stalling with this person, is that I know she would love to stay home, and I know that she would love to, I think that there might be a fear in leading, or that
There it
they
goes.
might be good enough for
Yep.
leading. I don't know.
You just hit the nail on the head. Anytime that someone can say, no, this is the goal, this is what I want, but I mean, well, one, when it's not producing results because they're not doing the work, there is there's something wrong. It all circles back to fear. It could be about the business. Maybe they don't feel equipped to lead. Maybe they're worried about what that looks like, or they're overwhelmed. It could be that. It could also be something that has nothing to do with the business, because I can say I want to stay home, but I can also be secretly afraid of that. Like, I know that sounds bizarre to be afraid of the thing that you want, but that's real. And we have to recognize that sometimes. And so that's a conversation I would have, like, tell me a little bit more about what you really want. Like, tell me a little bit more about if you were making the money that you want to make in this business, what does it look like in your day to day? What are the obstacles? What are you scared of? And sometimes, here's the key. Sometimes they don't even know they're scared. So that's where that disconnect comes and that's where your role as a guide becomes so vital, because you can see it, right? I see that there's something not right. There's something else going on. And that's where you can say, I know there's fear. Like, we can address these things. We can talk about these things, but then we've got to make a plan to move forward. And most of the time with fear, it's just that we have to walk somebody all the way through it. Right. So if it's fear of leadership, or if you think like maybe they would say like, yeah, what if I'm not equipped to lead? What if I don't have what it takes? What if I'm not enough? That's when you have the conversation. Talk to me about it. Pretend you're there. You just promoted a director. Let's talk about what it looks like. What's the worst thing that could happen? And you walk them all the way through to the end. And then they realize, oh, okay, everything's actually going to be fine. It's just sometimes they won't go there because they're scared of whatever they think is this arbitrary fear, Danielle, we're going to say something.
I was, and I have to go quick because I have a meeting at 11. I just watched a really amazing YouTube video. I don't remember who it was or where it was that I saw it. I'll look in my history if anybody wants to see it. But it was talking about figuring out your why and what you have to keep asking when you're coaching somebody. And again, I'm not practiced at this, but this is just what they said, is that they say they want to stay home. Well, then you have to ask them, why is that important to you?
Yeah.
And so you get that answer, and then you ask them, sorry, kids, you ask them again, well, why is that important to you? Because you want to spend time with your family. Okay. So why is that important to you? Because maybe when they were kids, they didn't get to have time with their parents. I don't know, whatever the reason might end up coming out. And then you ask again, why is that important to you? I guess. And then so the video goes on to say that if you ask that about 7 times is where you hit the nail on the head, where you get to the part where what Heather just said, you make them cry. And that becomes their eye-opening. Now I haven't done this. I literally just watched this maybe a couple days ago. But it was really eye-opening. I'm like, okay, now I need to do coaching calls because I need to ask all my people, why is that important to them?
Yeah.
Because they all have those
if you find that
why.
link, will you text it to me and I'll share it with everybody?
Yes, I will.
Okay. That's great. Thank you. And you're right. So the thing about it is we have to also remember that we have this opportunity for people to literally change their lives, literally have absolutely different. Yeah. 5 more minutes, baby. I'm sorry. You need to nail things. He's redoing our bathroom. Literally the ability to change anything they want about their lives if they're willing to do the work and if we can get them to believe it. But we also have to recognize that it is not natural for people to dream like that, right? We've been given a dream. Like the success dream is XYZ, right? Get married, go to school, get a degree, or go into the work field, or get a corporate job. Who the hell wants to work in a corporate job? Well, not me, but this was success, right? It's just crazy to me, but we call this the American dream, but no, it's like one dream. It's like, this is the dream, but it's kept us from actually being able to dream. And so people have a hard time getting outside of, this is the way things are. We're asking them to think of what is possible. And sometimes that's hard for them to wrap their brains around. And it's hard for them to get out of the like, okay, cool. I want to think about those things, but we're in debt and whatever. And what, there's life. And it's almost like we have to remove all those obstacles and say, okay, here's how we move forward. Here's how we actually get outside of our own, like all the reasons why we couldn't. And we start to dream a little bit bigger. Thanks, Danielle. Oh, she's gone. Okay, thanks, Peg. She said on the What Did You Share page, search on Dream. Jody Farmer just put up a good post about that. It's good. And you guys really, like, that's what it comes down to. I want you to, more than anything, I want you to release this idea that it is your job to motivate. It's not. And some of you have spent a long time spinning your wheels, trying to motivate, right? Trying to rally the troops, trying to tell everybody what to do so we can set sail, right? Like, no, it's really not your job, and it's never been your job. Again, it's the easier thing to attempt to do that, but it's not the more effective thing, and it's not the good work long term. So anyways, I hope this was helpful. I hope if nothing else, it shifted your perspective a little bit. If you want to talk more about it, feel free to text me, email me, whatever. I'd love to chat about it. If Danielle shows me that link, I'll share it. You might want to check out the one that Jody Farmer put up about dreaming too. So helpful? Okay. It's just a mindset shift, and it's hard, but it's possible. We have another Zoom. Let me tell you when. I don't know. I sent it in an email today. You guys, I don't know when it is. I don't know when it is. Oh, the 31st, the last day of the month at noon. And what did I say we're talking about? I just took content from the things that you guys put in the feedback. And I just was like, okay, multiple people said this. Let's talk about that. I can't remember what it is at this moment, but I am going to try to tell you real fast. So you could look at your own email, but I'll just help you out here. So the 31st, we're going to talk about how should I be leading and systems that work in leadership. So the link in that email does not work. I don't know why, so I will send you another link before that. Also, if you're on the email list, basically if you're my first through third generation director and you want to do a 20-minute one-on-one, I would love to do that. There is a link to book those in the email that you got today and the email you got last week. And I would love to do that. I kind of like got away from it for a while because I kept thinking like, so I think I have 110 first through third gen directors. And I was like, I can't, granted, I don't feel the necessity to, it's like, I know it's not my responsibility. I just want to help. And so Brian and I were talking anyways, we actually ended up doing a one-on-one with Danielle the other day. And we just on the phone for 20 minutes. She knew exactly what she wanted to talk about. And I got off the phone. I was like, oh, okay. I was making that harder than I thought it was. Like, I can do this. Like, if you want to talk for 20 minutes and there's a specific thing you want to talk about, we can do that. It's not a big deal. So I set aside some time for that. If you want to grab one of those dates, I really would love to chat. So